Uh, I think I need somebody to walk me through 28 years later. I need somebody to explain to me what this movie was trying to do, what it was trying to be, what was the goal, what was the purpose. Because I saw this 2 days ago, and this was not at all what I was expecting. Like, I was expecting something pretty similar to the first one, in a sense where it's just a straightforward zombie movie with the usual sprinkle that humans can be shittier than the creatures themselves. And yes, I know they're not actually zombies, they're the infected. I know. I was expecting something like that, especially since with this new one, Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, they're back. They're collabing, and if you don't know, they are the writer-director duo for the first movie, 28 Days Later. And given how disappointing the second movie was, 28 Weeks Later, which was handled by a completely different director and writer, completely different crew, I thought they came back in to like bring the franchise back to basics. But no, they did the complete opposite. And I also did not expect it to be what it wound up being because of the trailer. If you've seen the trailer, then you would know the trailer sold it as something pretty vague but pretty simple. And because of that, yeah, I was very, very surprised. And having seen what it actually is, I have to say that I did not like it. I thought it was very disappointing. And that's a bummer to admit, man. Like, I really wanted this to be good. Like, I am a huge fan of 28 Days Later. Like, look, when I was in high school, I put the movie on my Zune. Yes, I had a Zune, all right? I was a cool kid. I put the movie on my Zune and I watched it back to back all the time. I listened to In the House in a Heartbeat all of the time, right? And for those of you who don't know, that is a song that was used in that film that it's an iconic song. You've probably heard it in a lot of other things. Maybe you've heard it in Kick-Ass. Maybe you've heard it in a trailer for something else. I don't know, but like I would listen to that song all the time. I even listened to the song that they used for the grocery store sequence, AM 180 by Grandaddy. I fell in love with that song. I love the low resolution, low quality look of the Canon XL1, the camera that they used to film the first one. I think that's the name of the camera. Like I love how it looked. Not a lot of films from back in at that time filmed on a digital camera looked good or like they or nor do they ever really hold up. And 28 Days Later, despite technically not looking good, it still holds up. Like it still works. Yes, my expectations and my bias aside, I'm riding high on this because like again, 28 Weeks Later was not it. I thought this new one was going to pull it back, but it didn't. But I want to say right now, the reason why I didn't enjoy it is not because of the fact that it was nothing like the first one. I think a sequel has, the right to explore and do different things. My biggest issue is that it tried to do a lot of things and it failed at seeing any of them through. And another thing is the fact that, like, even though I don't think a sequel has to do what the predecessors already did, I think it also has to, you kind of like, you're setting up parameters when you're starting a franchise. Like, you give it a template. If you want to violate that template, you kind of got to do it gradually. You kind of got to do it in a way that makes sense. And this movie is doing both. It's paying respect to the template that was established by the first one. For example, like honoring the whole digital video aspect by filming the new one with an iPhone, keeping that same line of digital consistency, which is pretty cool. And also taking the kind of like faint, subtle kind of like fever dream quality of the first one that more so kind of kicked in by the very end of it, kind of taking that but making that like the main thing of the new one. Like they're paying respect like that. They're honoring the template that way. But as far as like violating the template, right, they're introducing a lot of new things that change how the world works. And that in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's good to add new things and to add more dynamics and more complexity as the franchise goes on. But the thing about that is that like a lot of the new things that they do add, which are cool, by the way, I want to say they're fascinating. And this is why I'm disappointed because they held a lot of potential, but it didn't go anywhere. These things, like, they are critical. And when I say they're critical, what I mean is in context to the world that was established, right? This particular details, some of these like they could literally change everything. But for some reason, right, the movie does not expand upon this. Like, it decides to treat it as more of a cheesy surface level emblem more than anything. And if I tried to not be like a you have to stick by the rules through and through. Like I'm cool with things being a little bit fluid. Like you don't necessarily have to spoon feed information to the audience. I don't believe in that at all. But I think when it comes to something that is this drastic, like if it changes the course of people's relationship with the infected and the infected themselves like this severely, like you do kind of have to show like the significance of this new like threat and what it means going forward. And a lot of those changes, like it doesn't just stop there. Like the way how the movie presents the non-infected, the humans, like the way how it shows them regressing, like they're constantly like through like visual cues, they're constantly compared to soldiers in medieval times, because the way that they're living now, it's kind of comparable to medieval living, right? The way how the movie goes out of its way to compare and contrast their regression versus the progression of the infected, how they've evolved. Like there, you kind of get the sense like there's this interesting sort of kind of like battle of humanity, like the modern man versus like the barbarian or the Neanderthal or something like that. Like it's it seems like it's setting itself up to be something kind of like interesting along those lines, but it goes nowhere. Another cool thing, somebody who has taken it upon themselves to live among the infected. You think there would be a lot to a character like this, but there isn't. Like there is one specific piece of philosophy that they like to tout, right? But that doesn't answer the question as to why they decided to live out there, right? Why they don't get rid of a certain big threat when they have the opportunity. You don't know if they're there to observe or study or, this little trick that they found to not get hunted. Like it doesn't really tell you much about that. It's not something that's really explained. It's a bunch of questions that you would have for somebody in that predicament. Just a bunch of natural questions. The movie never even once like entertains any of it at all whatsoever. And I'll be honest, as far as like my questions go, it goes beyond the motivation and everything too. Like I'm thinking about the rules. Like I'm just thinking about character logic. Like, hey, you guys are out in the open and you're talking pretty fucking loud. There's a bunch of infected everywhere. You don't quite know where they might be. So why are you talking this loud? What is your problem? And not even necessarily logic in terms of characters and what they do, but also in terms of writing, where it just feels like a little too convenient, where, again, no spoilers. Somebody is traversing across infected lands with another somebody who is not in a good way, mentally and physically very ill. But for some reason, and don't get me wrong, they do get caught up in situations, obviously, in a movie like this. Why wouldn't they? But for a lot of the traversal, they don't. And you would think with this specific ailments in mind for that one particular person, it would be a huge problem. But no, it's not. And there's even a certain instance where they're just conveniently able to just not be, affected by their affliction and can save somebody in a moment of life and death, which just, it felt too convenient, in addition to a whole string of other conveniences where people are saved in the nick of time, which I hate. The first one had its fair share of those too, but in this one, I feel like it was just worse. And I think aside from all of those, the biggest thing to me is what the movie was trying to be tonally, because this movie, it is a fever dream. It takes the camera work, the crazy, chaotic, high shutter speed editing. It takes advantage of it. It fucks with your senses. It messes up your sense of direction, to its benefit, because, you can never really tell how far or how close a creature is up until like a given moment, and then it'll startle you, and it's effective. Although there are other times where I do think they cheat in a way where I'm just like, okay, I feel like by now they would have gotten caught, but the plot says that they shouldn't get caught yet. But besides that, the movie, it's a fever dream. Just because the fever dream quality is there, that does not mean that you can just change the genre, change the tone, and not and expect everybody to just be on board. Like we're talking like, if you've seen 28 Weeks Later, if you've seen 28 Days Later, if you've seen a zombie film, if you're watching this and you're literally in, within the parameters that it sets up, within the tone that it carries for most of the movie, right? You're not going to see what happens for the last 10 minutes. It is a total flip. It went from 28 days later, 28 weeks later, 28 years later. It went from that to Kick-Ass. It went from that to A Clockwork Orange, sort of. What does that mean? Go see it for yourself. Some of you might think it's awesome. A lot of people online think it's awesome. I don't. I think it's dumb. I think it's stupid. If this were a separate film, if this were its own thing, whatever, I might be able to go with it a little bit more. But this is 28 blank later. There is already an established a template for this. If you want to like spring forward, like you can, but you have to do it in increments. You can't do like a total like 180 like that. And having said all of that, that is my biggest gripe. The fact that there were just so many things that just leave me wondering, hey, what was that all about? What was this person doing? What does this thing mean in the world? Why is this not being talked about? What would it mean if X, Y, and Z? What does it mean if this group of people, by group, the humans, what does it mean that the humans are regressing like this, but the infected are evolving like this? Like, a lot of things were there on the plate. They were, but they just nothing was done with it. And because this is a thing by Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, two very refined artists, like they're both very good. I'm open to the idea that maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is some commentary going on that's just not clicking with me. So if anybody wants to share their interpretation of whatever they think it might be, please do. I mean, there's no guarantee that I'll take that same stance and like it more, but I'm open to hearing what people got to say about it. But yeah, in the meantime, as far as a consistent, polished, tight film, it was not that. It wasn't scary either, but that's okay. Not every horror film needs to be you can only be scared by so many things for, depending on who you are. But yeah, I did not enjoy this, but maybe you will. There are a lot of people online who got a kick out of it. Let me know what you thought about it. And yeah.